Hello and welcome to StroongeCast episode 65.
They stole control.
That they did. I nearly said 56 for some reason. My mind was like, huh? Where am I? I don't know what's happening. But yeah, it's been a good week actually for me, but you tell me about yours first because that's the way we do it.
It's been alright. What did I do? Oh, on the weekend I went to... So a few weeks ago, if you heard that episode, I took Alice to a performance of the Muppet Christmas Carol with a live orchestra. And this was at the same place. I think it was a different orchestra though, but it was for the film Love Actually, which was lovely, very Christmassy, with my sister this time, because that is not an appropriate film for Alice.
Not yet.
No. So I did that on Saturday, and yeah, just a usual week. Nothing crazy or exciting, really.
Nah.
No. Tell us about your week.
Well, I have tried to fix my sad, as it were, by getting back into music making, and I'm really pleased with some of the stuff I've been working on.
Yeah, you've done lots this week, haven't you?
I've done lots, yeah. I've been working on my, what I call the Shorts project. And these are short tracks that you could use for, well, podcasts actually. Intro, outro kind of thing. I added 4 more in the last few days. And I plan to try and get to 180 of them because there's 175 at the moment. So I want to do 5 more before the year ends. So 2 were repurposed. Actually, yeah, 3 were repurposed. But 1 no one had heard before anyway. And 1 was written from scratch. And I have a couple other things. And I'm just sort of turning them into this kind of short form thing. Because this library has been a labour of love for over 10 years of mine. And I really enjoy working on it. But the last time I did so was May of 2023. And I thought, that's too long. So I've been busy doing that. We have had a sick boy in the house the last few days.
We have, yeah. Jake was really poorly over the weekend, so he had a couple of days off school. And he's still not 100%. He's very quiet.
He's very quiet.
Yeah. You miss our Jakey. But he's back to school. So his choice as well.
Yes.
But yeah.
He said he was bored.
Yeah, he said he was bored. Well, I think when your friends are all at school, you have that kind of FOMO, don't you?
Definitely.
So, and because it's an important year for him, it's GCSE year. So the longer he's off, the more he has to catch up on, and it's kind of difficult then. But yeah, so hopefully he'll be back to his normal self soon.
You're saying things that actually tie really nicely into the episode in a minute. But before we do that, quiz. Give me a quiz.
Yes. So the question last week was, what animal is known to laugh when tickled?
A hyena?
No. I can understand why you would think that, but it's actually rats. Scientists discovered that they make high-pitched giggles when tickled.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Ratatickle.
Yes.
How radical.
Oh, very good. Ratical.
Yes, indeed.
So this week, the question is, which fruit was once so rare in Europe that people would rent it to show off at parties?
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
That reminds me of an episode when we had Ed on. We talked about eating things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, there we are. So, look, Jake being ill, but of course he's post 16 now, so it doesn't matter. But had he not been, how would he have kept up if he lived in Australia starting this week?
Kept up?
With his friends. Because the whole idea behind They Stole Control, at least my thinking, is that the government in Australia have decided in their infinite wisdom to take control away from parents and take it upon themselves to be the gatekeepers of social media for teens below the age of 16.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, given... I mean, I think probably all Jake's friends are 16 now, but maybe there's a 15 left for a bit.
Yeah.
How are they supposed to keep up? Are they going to phone each other like we did in the old days?
They still have text, I suppose. And
Possibly.
is WhatsApp considered social media?
I'm not 100% what they've
Yeah.
considered social media.
But I mean,
should
they still
imagine-
have text, so I think you still do have that basic level of communication.
Right. But that means for those people under that age, you've got to get them all into that new method of communication.
Oh, yeah.
And if you're not in the group, and also group text, right? Remember, there's Android and iOS problems. You've got the green bubble, the blue bubble. And if some of your friends have one method and some have the other, then what? And if WhatsApp is considered social, which it might be because it's a meta platform, you are stuck.
Yeah, but I think, and I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with this because I think it's a really difficult topic. I do think that there are a lot of positives that people would say outweigh that negative side, what you're describing, and that safety should come first before, just being able to socialize.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm firmly on the other side of the scale for this because I think it engenders potential bullying. It could make it difficult to communicate in family chats. It could make it difficult for the teen to not go off and do other things, right? When you ban somebody from doing something, right? In the first Harry Potter book, Dumbledore says, don't go to the third floor corridor unless you want to die a very painful death. Yeah. Impressionable young people are going to do that because you told them not to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what this says to me is that the government thinks you as a parent, me, I'm too stupid, too incompetent, and not capable of being responsible enough for my teen's safety that we have to do it. That's what it says to me.
But I think that's because so many parents have so many struggles when it comes to social media. They either don't have the understanding of social media and the awful side of it, what our kids and teenagers are able to view and to see. They don't have the ability to put the parental controls onto their phones, whatever that form. They don't have the ability, or it's very difficult to say, I'm just not going to allow you to have it. Like it's a really hard thing. We can say, oh, well, we're able to make those decisions. But even we have relaxed certain rules that we had because we didn't want our children to miss out on things. So I think it's really hard for parents when you've got that pressure from your children. Whereas what the government are saying, also then you have those parents that don't care, that just, oh, well, whatever, I was fine, they'll be fine. So I think what the Australian government are doing is saying, well, we're just going to take that away. And therefore, for parents, it's an easy option. You can just say, well, sorry, you can't have it because there's no ability now.
But you know what doesn't have an age limit? ChatGPT. And you know what killed somebody recently?
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
No, I agree with you.
So when you take away control like that, right? All you do is you push someone to a different method, or you push them to a VPN, or you push them to borrowing their brother or sister's phone in the dark.
Well, yeah, you make them more sneaky. You do make them turn to being more sneaky. No, and that's the thing. That's why I'm very much on the fence. I don't necessarily agree with a total ban. I don't like the idea of being told as a parent, you can't make this decision. But I do know how difficult it is. And we've had this, like I said, where we've said with certain apps, you are not having that. We do not like that app. And then we've kind of felt that pressure of why they needed them or wanted them to the level that we then decided, okay. Now that also, we looked into that quite a lot and made sure that we had all the right parental controls, and we have talked in the past about how we have a really good relationship and trust with our kids. So, I think we feel safe, or certainly safer, in the decisions that we've made. But I think it is hard for parents when you've got your teenager or even your child, because I don't think it's even just teens anymore. Coming home and saying, well, everybody else has it. Why can't I? It's really hard to be the bad parent and stop your child being the only one.
That's as maybe, yeah.
In these situations.
But I still don't think control should be handed to a third party, right? The ultimate control should be you as a parent.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know how, you find out, or the government put out on, for example, the government websites, so that it's not wasting paper, information about
there is.
What you should be doing.
There's lots of information out, and actually, there are a lot of sites that you can go on to find out all this information. There is, with Instagram and Snapchat and TikTok and... See, that's the thing as well, is I think there's loads of ones that we don't even know. Those are just the main ones that we're actually aware of. I think there's lots of apps that we have no idea about.
Yeah, there will be.
In which case then we have no ability to control those in the same way unless we physically take possession of our children's phones and look at them. But those other ones, the main ones, you can have parental controls over them and have them tied to your accounts as well, so you can see what's going on.
Which is why I don't like this ban.
Well, I think it's because there are still ways around those things, and not enough parents maybe are using that to the full ability, I guess.
But that's on them.
I agree. But I think then you could say the same thing about when we went a few weeks or months ago, whenever it was, when we discussed smacking.
Right.
And we discussed, should it be made illegal? Should the government make it illegal? Now, some people would say, well, that's up to a parent. The government shouldn't take away a parent's choice to discipline their children and how they discipline them. And other people would say, well, it's about the child's safety. But social media and the impact on our children is also about their safety. So I suppose it opens a much wider question of, we want the government to be involved in some aspects to protect children, but not in other aspects.
But you were quite against the Online Safety Act in this country, stopping Jake from visiting news sites and things, which is not social media. Mm-hmm. News is far more important, even if you don't want to see it. You have to know what's going on in your world.
Yeah.
You were against that.
It's not that I'm not against this
right.
at all. I'm just trying to see it from both sides and see the opposing comments that I'm sure people will say.
Yeah.
So that we can show that, we do understand. I do understand both sides. I just think that social media has been allowed into our children's lives
from an early age.
So easily now.
Yeah.
But then I also think you can take social media away, but there's always going to be issues. There's always going to be something impacting our children.
And if it's not that, they will manufacture something else that will do the same thing, and then we'll be back at square one in a couple years.
And is it better that we allow them at a safe age to have these things, but we implement more education, not just for the parents, but for the children? I mean, that's the thing. I don't know how much education is actually given to the children in schools. And yeah, it should be the parents. The parents should be sitting their kids down and saying, these are the dangers or whatever. And it is difficult because teenagers can be very flippant about things. And yeah, all right, never happened to me, whatever.
I've got a thought. You just gave me a really good thought. I think it is anyway. You tell me otherwise.
Okay.
In the 80s, we'd have policemen come in and talk about drugs, right? Mm-hmm. It was a thing.
Yeah.
So,
I think they still do that.
Right, and they should.
Yeah.
But they should also have somebody who is an independent, right? Not from any of the big social media companies, because they're going to sell it to you. But someone who maybe is a parent and who had bad dealings with a social media company, their child or something, come in and give talks, mandatory. Everybody has to be there and attend unless you're sick, right? Yeah, because I think if you can talk about this in such a way that it gives those young teens or young people food for thought. Like, do I really need this? That's going to be better than just banning it. Because if you ban it, you're saying, I can have it, but you can't. No. That's what you're saying.
Well, you're... Yeah, I guess. But I think you're saying this is not safe for you yet.
But it's that you can have it when you're older mentality. And when you say that to kids, I mean, it's implied, it's not obviously said. You're saying, all right, you're not old enough yet, but the minute you have a birthday or tomorrow, you're fine. Why wasn't I fine 59 minutes before that? Like,
because
this
there
age...
has to be a cut-off thing. Because if you're saying... so
if you don't ban
what
it
age
at all,
would
then
you
there's
say
no
then?
cut-off.
Because what, they've banned it for under 16?
Yeah. It's gone into effect, I think, today. Or as of yesterday or something.
So what age would you say that there should be?
There shouldn't be. This is what I'm saying. This is down to the parents, and you can move that as a sliding scale. If you've got a very naughty child, you may not want them to even have a phone at all. This is the problem. Like, I think you can't blanket everybody with the same deal. And they have. Across the entire country.
Yeah. True.
But I can guarantee you they're going to see massive ChatGPT uptick and fake friends, imaginary friends. Because imaginary friends are no longer imaginary. This is the problem. Imaginary friends are now online. They're just AI chatbots. So they're virtually imaginable, which is a silly statement back in 1997, but not here in 2025. That is bad.
Yeah.
That is really,
I just want to say,
bad.
they do actually have people, and have done for many years, parents and other people that visit different schools and talk about experiences. I don't know how many of them have, because I remember there used to be that big thing about knife crime, and so you would have parents of young people who had been killed go into schools and stuff. I'm assuming that they have things like that for social media and stuff, but I think that a lot of the time those kind of things are brushed off by teenagers because it's seen as ridiculous. They don't take it in. So I think there needs to be some work on making it more, more targeted to teenagers. It's not this kind of twee, oh, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. But it needs to be a bit more realistic and say, look, we know you're probably going to do these things. Let's talk about how you can do them safely. Because teenagers are really clever. They're really smart at getting around things.
Well, this is the thing. This is the thing.
Yeah. I think it's a really tricky topic.
Yeah, it probably is.
Because so many awful things have come from social media with kids.
Yeah. And the thing is, if you listen to me, you might think I'm just all for it without any kind of filters. I'm not. I like the idea of the way we have it set up for our youngest, for example, with filters. You can see everything that goes on.
Yeah.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah.
But a complete ban, I think, is a problem. And we haven't discussed yet, and I've seen already online, people saying it's misidentified my age.
What do you mean?
Platforms have been misidentifying people's ages, saying that they're under 16 when they're actual adults.
How has it worked that out, though?
I don't know how it's worked that out. This is the thing. I'm not 100% on that yet. But we're going to see more of that in Australia as the years, weeks, months go by.
Yeah, I mean, I think these social media sites have done a lot to try and protect kids more. But I think there is always room for improvement. And I think that's what really needs to be tackled, and education around it. And actually, there are things like Facebook and stuff that still allow absolutely horrific things to be posted and said. And that needs to be where the government are.
I would say focus your efforts there more than banning a select group of people.
I think it's so hard, though. That's the thing. It's easy to put through, within reason. It's easier to put through and just say, well, we're just going to ban it, than actually tackle the higher up people and say, you need to be stopping this stuff. This is not okay to have this, not just for kids, not just for teenagers, but for adults. We don't need to be seeing these kind of absolutely horrific things so easily.
Which is why I think it would be better targeted to make the owners of these platforms work harder on removing that kind of material
Yeah.
than just banning a group of people, a select group of people.
Yeah.
I don't know if there is necessarily a right or a wrong, but I feel in my heart that you're telling my child what to do, not me. And I have a problem with that fundamentally as a parent.
Well, I do. But I think they're also just trying to say, look, we're just going to remove this. You don't have to worry about it. Your kids don't have to worry about it. It's done. It's dusted. Gone.
But that's so easy. And what I mean by that, like we already said, is all you need is a VPN. The minute you're outside of Australia, right, you hop to New Zealand using Nord or whatever you're going to use, you can get on again. And those people that could the day before access the accounts that they had and today cannot, they're not just going to want to leave them hanging. So there will be a glut of VPN downloads. There will be sneaky taking mum or dad's phone or brother or sister's phone who's older. It's terrible. The implementation is just terrible. And I think this is what is going to cause them problems.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to deal with that, and we don't live in Australia. And I would like to speak to Australians, but I don't know that we have many that listen, if any. But I'd like to find some. I mean, we have already people circumventing. Look, our own son did, and I don't care. The Online Safety Act of this country using a VPN, because I think news is important. And if you're going to be able to vote age 16 if they lower the voting age, and you can't read news about the parties you're supposed to vote for, you don't have the right. That's different than social media, I admit, but it's still a problem.
Yeah. I just really think it needs to be tackled higher up.
I agree.
To be honest.
I think these companies have a lot to answer for, that it's come to this, you see. The thing is, if Australia do it, and we in the West will see that, and if we see it works, right, the UK, the US, Europe will follow.
Yeah.
So imagine you've had access to whatever it is you've had access to. Let's say you joined, I think WhatsApp allows you from 13. Let's say WhatsApp is included. I'm not 100%, but let's say it is. So from 13 to 15, and it gets added, so let's say you've had access to it for a year, 13 to 14. And then when you're 14 and a half, if this rule comes in, you can no longer access it. What are you going to do? You've already established all your groups. Your family is there, for example. We have a family group on WhatsApp. So what happens if in a year Alice can no longer access that? Are we all going to move somewhere else? We could. But this government banning means that we are forced to, not want to.
Yeah.
That's my thinking.
I think it's tricky.
It is.
It would be interesting to know what other people think. If you've got any different points that we haven't mentioned, haven't thought about.
I hope so, because, we're only two parents in one country that don't yet have this problem. But I'd love to hear from people that maybe do, or maybe
We also are lucky enough that our children haven't had any issues with social media in that sense.
No, the only issue we had was with that chat of the Xbox app, which we mentioned some episodes ago.
Yeah, and that's something very different that wouldn't be part of this.
No, and we
ban,
solved it.
So, yeah, exactly. That's just something being hacked. But, I think it would, a parent whose child maybe has been affected would have a different view, a stronger view.
Yes.
So, that would also be interesting to hear.
We'd love to talk to you if that's something you'd feel comfortable talking about. Well, there we are. We'll pause that for you and leave you with those thoughts. Leave your thoughts in the comments, wherever you like to leave comments, whether it's YouTube, Spotify, Mastodon, Facebook, I don't know. I do post there every week.
Yeah.
But if you're under 16 in Australia, you're not going to be able to, so hey. Oh dear. All right, what's your Stroonge news?
Very quick one, but it's about a Swedish startup company that have built a device that exchanges food for litter. So the wild crows in Sweden have been trained that if they pick up cigarette butts and they post it into this little device, a piece of food will be given back. So it's helping to reduce the billions of cigarette butts that are thrown on the ground every year, and saving a lot of cleanup, I guess. So yeah, crows are incredibly intelligent. So they've been really, and they're just wild crows. These are not, fully trained at home and then released. They're just wild crows. They've picked it up. So they go around, collect as and when they want to, and they get a piece of food out of it.
Well, This is a good way if you're feeling homeless and you're a crow. I'm hungry. I'll take this disgusterous thing. I'll put it in there. Okay, I'm fed for a bit.
Yeah.
Easy money.
Absolutely.
That's actually so cool.
Yeah.
I hope other countries will do that.
I hope so. I think it's a really clever idea.
But governments, if you're listening to this, and I know you listen to everything, why don't you focus on stopping people littering more?
Because that's hard. You have to have people out there with the fining, implementing the fines and stuff.
We're such a surveillance world. We've got CCTV cameras everywhere.
True. That is true.
Well, there we are. That's us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to drink my tea. I'm still allowed to do that. Going to enjoy my tea. Oh, Alice made a lemon cake the other day. Fantastic. But you shouldn't feel usurped. You're still my queen of the kitchen.
Thank you.
Right. Peace and enjoy your week. We will see you next Thursday, Friday.
Bye.